And I want to talk about Costco and Trump. This to me is really interesting, okay? Because the Trump tariffs, you know, are the most biggest crock, the biggest awful policy. That doesn't sound right, but tariffs are a terrible policy. I mean, tariffs. I mean, every economist will tell you that tariffs are damaging to the local economy, and we're seeing that prove to be true. Trump sold this to Americans and lied by saying that, oh, the other nations are going to pay. The China is going to pay for the tariffs. No, they don't. I mean, there might be in some cases where China will adjust the price of the products they sell to America to sort of soften the pain on the American importer. But in the end, the American importer pays the tariff. And that's a cost that he sends down the supply chain to distributors and retailers and ultimately to consumers. And one of those retailers is Costco. And they've had to raise their prices. And I'll give Costco credit. I love Costco. Every time I go, I even have product delivered here from Costco through Instacart. And but Costco, I can buy like a pair of jeans there, at least before the Trump tariffs, for like less than $15, and they can last me for 3 or 4 years. It's incredible, the quality of products and the low price of products, because they're being made all around the world, but primarily in Asia, Southeast Asia, parts of Vietnam and Indonesia, and in China and Malaysia and Bangladesh. There's a lot of clothing manufacturing that's going on there. We're buying a lot of it in America at really low prices. This is one of the categories where prices have gotten a lot cheaper over time in America. And those countries are seeing their economies grow and people rising out of poverty there. I mean, talk about a win-win. But with Trump's tariffs, that's increasing the price of goods. And Costco has been absorbing part of that. They pass on some of it, but they're also taking the hit on the expense of the tariffs. And now the federal government, or the Supreme Court is saying, or is going to be challenged in a case. Let me preface it. There have been cases in lower courts that have said that the Trump tariffs are not legal because the Trump tariffs, which were, by the way, not enacted by Congress, they were enacted by the president unilaterally. They were enacted under an emergency decree, which apparently is some special power that was given to the president by Congress in the early 70s that allows the president to essentially work around the Constitution, because the Congress is supposed to manage tariffs and the purse. But it gives the president the opportunity to implement tariffs unilaterally if there's a emergency of some kind. Like, for example, if there's suddenly a shortage of a critical product in America, like steel, or, we could come up with any number of scenarios where there's a security threat, national security problem, where we can't manufacture in America. We have to rely on imports, and there's an emergency and we need to rebuild an industry in America. Those are kind of extreme cases. But one thing we know for sure is that there was no emergency on protecting American clothing manufacturers, because frankly, most clothing is made overseas. Nearly all shoes are made overseas. And so it's good to see that Costco is suing the federal government. Essentially what they're trying to do is to get in line with, if they get a lawsuit in their favor, then the minute the Supreme Court overturns the tariff, assuming they do, which is a big assumption, but assuming they overturn the tariffs because it's not based on an emergency decree, as Trump said, well, then they're going to have to pay damages. And if there's a lawsuit that's already filed and has been ruled on, that's going to put Costco near the front of the line. Now, I think it's great that Costco is doing this, because so many corporations in America are bending the knee to Trump, are kissing the ring of Trump. Like you see Tim Cook from Apple coming in and giving Trump gifts made out of gold and trying to stroke him. You see other billionaires or other large company CEOs that try to basically not piss off Trump, and so they can stay out of his scope of where he's going to fire the next bullet. But I like to see some of these corporations say, screw you, I'm fighting against this. I wish we would see more of that when they drag CEOs up in front of these congressional hearings, and they're made to answer for what's happening in their industry or with their company. I mean, social media executives keep getting raked over the coals in front of Congress. But it's great to see that Costco is fighting back for their own interests, but also for the interests of their customers. So, and a great deal of their non-food products are imported. I mean, this is a big deal for Costco. So, is this going to result in Costco getting a windfall of their own money back from the federal government? And then would they disperse that money to their consumers, to their customers? My guess is they would. I don't, and there's a number of different ways they could probably do that, especially since it's um, a membership-driven organization. They could track all the purchases that being made, and probably if they wanted to go through the detail of it all, is come up with a pretty accurate or close to accurate refund check for each individual. Wouldn't that be great? We'll see if that happens. I don't know, but I just love the fact they're fighting back. And by the way, everything's more expensive. We're talking a lot now about how cars are on average 50 grand and up. You put a tariff on steel or aluminum, that increases the price of the cost of goods coming into America, which increases even manufacturing production in America. So the whole thing with tariffs is just awful. If we didn't have tariffs, Americans would have access to lower cost goods and therefore have money left over in their pocket, in their wallet, to spend elsewhere in the United States economy or to invest elsewhere in the U.S. economy, thus resulting in more economic growth in America if we didn't have tariffs. But tariffs are really here being used as another wedge issue, as an us versus them, America versus China. And it's used to divide the nation, to throw gasoline on the fire. And the officials in the federal government try to evoke these images of days gone past where Americans had good jobs on assembly lines. And I mean, that horse has left the barn. I mean, in many cases, all of the assembly line jobs have been replaced by robots, by automation, if they haven't already been sent overseas and outsourced to companies in Asia. So again, I always see this as, does Trump really care about saving American industries? I don't really think he does. I think he sees the tariffs as an opportunity where he can flex some power that other presidents have been unwilling to do to the same degree, and use that as a negotiation tactic with other nations to get goodies that are either coming to America that he can take credit for, or in some cases, if there might be a potential grift, from that benefits the Trump family. So all of this is just politicization, pushing buttons, shiny objects to get us off focus from where he is enriching himself. So good on you, Costco. This makes me love Costco even more because of it. I think it's great. Okay, let's keep on trucking. And I'm just kind of blitzkrieging through this.